In today's video, we are going to be talking about the macroeconomic lens behind gold. We're joined by the CEO of Blue Lagoon Resources, Mr. Rana Vig. So make sure you hit the like button on this video to send it out into the YouTube universe. Give us a comment down below. This is Go Gold Go. And it's good to see you, Rana.
Likewise. Thanks for having me again.
So since the last time we talked, it's pretty interesting because, I would say all the things with gold that have brought so many people to it, I guess you'd say the macro environment that brings people to gold has never been more, I don't know if bullish is the word, but there's so many of these trends that are now amplified. And I was wondering if you could start by, being someone such as yourself that's in the gold and silver industry, give us your broader view on the global financial system today, right now in the world, post 18 months, 16 months after lockdowns, where we find ourselves and how you think this will affect gold moving forward.
Well, I think it's a disaster, right? One word. What a way to start an interview, right? I mean, it's sad but true. The basic economics, the basic things haven't changed. The pandemic and everything else has just made everything worse because governments were already so broke. They were already printing a lot of money because, look, let's face it, they don't really have a lot of avenues to generate income except for you and me, right? And they already squeezed us. How much more can they squeeze us? How much more can we keep contributing, to their coffers by that taxation? So the only means they have is by printing money, which obviously devalues, right? Anytime you put more supply out, it's going to devalue, your base, and that's what's been happening. And the pandemic has just made it worse. And look what just happened, right? You got a new administration, and they're trying to put people back to work. And governments love. I think we talked about this last time. Their governments love doing infrastructure projects because that puts people back to work. What is it, 2 trillion or something? That was just announced, and there might be some struggles, but I think eventually it's going to get passed. In one way or another, and maybe it's a little bit less. But the point is, we don't talk about millions anymore, right? We don't even talk about billions anymore. We only talk about trillions. I mean. So, that's what keeps devaluing the currency. And the simple matter is that the governments lie all the time, and they keep telling us, inflation, let's just get it to 2%. Well, how come that every time we go to the store, it feels more like 10%? Lumber is up 3 times. Gas, bread, milk, you name it, right? Everything is going up, 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 right? So yeah, I think that we're in a lot of trouble, and I think that is I know that that is an environment that gold and silver and some other commodities just thrive on because it's just simple economics, simple math, right? Gold and silver in particular have no place but up to go because of the devaluation that keeps happening.
So where do you think it goes from here, right? You called it a disaster. And here in America, one of the trending things is that there's for hire signs everywhere. Obviously, there's so much unemployment money going around. People aren't working. I live in an area that had 0 shutdowns, so nobody lost their job. Yet there's still for hire signs everywhere. And so it's this interesting combo between this incredible pace of money printing while simultaneously hollowing out the entire economy. And as you said, it seems like their only answer is going to be many iterations of infrastructure, which is just going to cause more price inflation and more devaluation. Where do you think it goes from here?
Well, it's a great question. That's the $1 million question. And every time you talk to a different guest, I'm sure there's, different answers. I think part of the challenge is, Jake, is that there's so much has changed in our world in the last few years that it's really difficult. The old rules don't seem to apply. Many of the old things don't seem to apply. There's so many things that have changed through technology, in various things. So, but I think the truthful answer is that, I don't think that anyone really has a really clear understanding, where it goes, because I think the bottom line is that governments are not ready to make tough decisions, right? I mean, let's look at the basics. The basics are that you have to make more than you spend, whether it's you and me living in our place or our families, or whether it's government, right? Those are basically the fundamentals. So if governments are spending more and they keep getting into bigger and bigger debt, at some point, does it not logical that somebody better say, whoa, we really got to make some tough decisions, right? And I believe that, we're adults. I believe most people are very responsible. And if there was actually truth being told to us, right, we would actually, consider saying, you know what, maybe we all better tighten our belts. Maybe we all better just kind of come together and really make a concerted effort. And it's going to be painful. But the challenge is governments continue to lie. They're driven by lobby groups. They want to be, obviously I have never seen in my lifetime such a degradation, of the political culture. Everything seems to be about, no one cares about anything anymore except how do I get back reelected? And I think that becomes a real problem because it's such a short horizon that everyone is looking at, and they're not looking down the road. They don't care. I mean, I don't know. Is it just me? Do you feel that?
No, I do as well. I mean, I've got a almost 11-month-old daughter, and that's why I asked that question. Nobody really has the answer, but it's really the question I'm most interested in is how do you even put a solution together for it? I mean, obviously, we know what some of them, we need to get off the money printing. We need to shrink size of governments, but those things aren't going to happen. And that's why I wonder where it goes. I mean, does it just go to the wheels fall off and then they institute a new currency once inflation is so bad that there's civil unrest? Because they say, it's temporary. I don't think this is temporary, though. What do you make of these comments about this type of inflation being temporary?
Well, look, it's not exactly. I mean, it only. What I think what happens is, in the first world here, I think we have our heads buried in the sand, right? Just look around the world. Look at other countries that where inflation has gone crazy, where the currency has just completely been debased, and it takes you like $1 million or some crazy thing to buy a cup of coffee, right? I mean, it sounds so outrageous, but there are countries that has happened with. So I mean, it's not. But I think what happens is everybody kind of thinks, well, that can never happen here. Well, how long has it been? Who could have ever imagined that we would have been in this zero interest rate, kind of environment? When I was growing up, 9-10% was kind of the norm of interest rate, right? When we got our mortgage, it'd be like 11% or 10%. Right? How long has it been now? We've been at this ridiculously low interest rate. And so what happens, right? Like you just said, they just keep kicking it down. Or that's what everybody wants to do. Nobody wants to deal with the fundamental problem. That's what the issue is, because let's face it, the reality is it's going to be very painful. But the wheels have to come off at some point, because the bottom line is if you owe money to somebody, you got to eventually pay it back. And you're right. And at some point, the dollar better be, worth something, and it better be backed by something. And the only reason, by the way, I believe that the US dollar is still considered in some ways the reserve currency is because, America's always been the beacon, right? So people around the world look at it and there's always this hope. And I think people still feel that somehow it's going to get turned around somehow. And I don't know, man. It's I hate to be such a pessimist, because I'm not. In generally, that's not my sort of outlook in life. But when I look at what's happening around the world and in these countries, our countries in Canada and the United States, it's depressing. Which is why I just have to look after myself, my family, and keep accumulating the precious metals. I keep investing in what I believe are a good solid companies that are going in those spaces that I believe are going to skyrocket with the super cycle that's I believe we're in with the commodities. And I think that's all we can do, unfortunately, right, is look after ourselves.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that because I like what you said, and it was where I was going next is look after self. And to me, that's kind of led, it's led to gold, it's led to silver, it's led to mining stocks and commodity stocks. And it's also led to me for business. And, before we talk a little bit more about gold and in that sector, you've been an incredibly, I guess I kind of liken you to a serially successful entrepreneur. I mean, you've people that don't know, you've had very, very, very large companies. I think you were CEO of the largest cannabis financing in Canadian history. And,
I wasn't the CEO, but I took that company public. That is correct. It was the largest Canadian cannabis financing in history. That was nearly a $6 billion RTO. The company still trades today at the stock's at about $18. It still trades today at about 12 billion. And then just to make sure that it wasn't a fluke, I did a second one out of Arizona called Harvest Health and Rec, and that was a $300 million raise, and it was the third largest in 2018, and it just got bought out. Stock's trading at about $5. It just got bought out by Trulieve about 2 weeks ago for 2.1 billion. Wow. So I'm very successful, but of course, there's been other situations as well where you don't have the same success, but that you balance that, right?
Yeah,
but
you win some, you lose some, but you've had some big numbers, right? And so I want to ask you a little bit about, before we drop a little bit more into gold commodities, the super cycle you discussed. What do you think are the most important tenets or components to becoming financially successful in the world today? What are some of the mistakes you see people make? For someone that's watching this video that's realized, I need to grow my income, develop new sources, start a business, grow my business. What's kind of your advice on that?
I think there's a number of things that people make a mistake on. I mean, one is they don't really do their proper due diligence. They follow the crowd. People, especially in the markets, they always seem to buy at the wrong time and sell at the wrong time because they look at the gyrations, right? Gold pulls back a little bit, they panic and they sell, right? So often people, when gold pulled back a couple of months ago below 1,700, I was a buyer, not a seller, right? That's what often happens. Look, in today's environment, there's never been a time in history when so much information is available right at our fingertips, right? So there's a lot of opportunity, and the mistake that I think people make is they become spectators for the longest time, and they wait and they wait and they wait, and then by the time they jump in, often it becomes too late, because most people take longer to plan a vacation than they take to plan their life. Right? Right? Do you know what I mean? So honestly, it's not that complicated. If people would just pause every day and actually think about what the plan is. I mean, how often do you think people sit down and actually just think? I don't mean just some random thoughts. I mean, just to sit down for 15, 20, 30 minutes with a notepad and say, where's my life at? And what am I doing? What am I doing today? What did I do last week? What's my plan next week? And, and some of it, some of it's not even their fault because, people are under so much pressure, right? Because of all the, various things that are going on. But honestly, I learned a long time ago, the cavalry isn't coming, man, right? We've got to help ourselves. And I think that I would encourage people to start with looking at where they're at and figuring out what the plan forward is. There is no quick, rich scheme. That's the challenge. Everybody wants to have this get rich quick, but most people underestimate what they can do in the long term and overestimate what they can do in the short term, right? So the challenge becomes, start wherever you are. If you only have $5,000, okay, start with that. If you only have $1,000, start with that. Do you see what I'm saying, Jake? I mean, the thing is, you got to start with whatever you have and you learn to put it to work. Money's a tool. That's really what it is. It's a tool to either buy something or invest in something. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that we have to become more of a needs-based society rather than a want-based society. Yes, I want this, but do I need it? So there's a lot of things that we just kind of covered there in our short things, but I think those are some of a handful of things that I think that that people make mistakes in. But let me say that what the positive is, right? There has never been a better time, in my opinion, right, to change one's economic position, condition, especially if you're looking at the commodities, because we are in the beginning of a super cycle. And that the same thing, by the way, happened, a couple of years ago in cannabis, right? It was the same thing, right? The companies, good companies, when people invested in them, they just skyrocketed. So, you find good companies, you find good management, you follow along, what they're doing, you do your due diligence, and then you make sure you have a plan of action, and you get involved. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we're so conditioned not to think that the problem actually is as simple as we literally don't think about anything. And so we're living in this reactionary mode where we just follow the rules and we live a very mediocre life. And, writing, stopping and thinking changed my life. Earl Nightingale said 1% of people think, 2% of people think they think, and 97% of people would rather die than think. That's what he used to say. And, I think that's very true and powerful. And I agree with you. There's a lot of conversation now, and in many respects, it's true, but there's a lot of conversation now about how economically it's never been worse. And from a debt perspective, a currency devaluation perspective, I agree. But there's a lot of people that argue that millennials are hurt worse than anyone. It has never been easier to make an extra few thousand or 10K. It's never been easier to do that. And like you said, we need to flip our mind around, not to mention the investment opportunities in commodities. So I'm right there with you. Now, can you elaborate on your idea of the super cycle that you discussed? You said you believe we're heading into or presently in a commodity super cycle. What does that mean, and what does it look like to you?
Well, it means that gold and silver, if we're looking at the precious metals, have nowhere up to go for the reasons that we talked about, right? So this for the last 10 years, it was kind of stuck, right? Commodities are very cyclical. So in the last 10 years, nothing much was happening. Gold was sitting around $1,250, $1,300 for a long time. It would go to 14, then it would retract again. But now, right, gold and silver both are in my opinion, and listen, a lot more smarter people than me are talking about this, right? Who have access to incredible research are talking about this, that it has no place but up to go because of various reasons. Also because, by the way, it's harder and harder to do discoveries, right? And a lot of the low-hanging fruit is gone. And that's one of the reasons why we're very excited about our project at Blue Lagoon Resources, right? Because we have a high-grade mine, right? We're talking about 10, 12, 15 grams a ton, whereas a lot of the it's difficult to find, properties like that. So I think that, that's one. Copper is another one. Copper is not only infrastructure. We just talked about that, infrastructure programs that are going to be coming, like no tomorrow. Copper is required. A lot of copper is required. But this whole electric car movement. I mean, look at the GM everyone's announcing that by the next 20, 25 years, they're going to literally stop making, gasoline and diesel cars. I mean, that's huge. It takes 4 or 5 times more copper to make one of those electric cars than a normal car. So, and then there's a supply, constraint. It takes hundreds of millions of dollars and 10, 15 years to put a new copper mine into production. Same thing. All the low-hanging fruit is gone. And we're very fortunate in my company at Blue Lagoon Resources. We also have an incredible copper property that sits right next to our gold property. So these are some of the reasons that I believe that we're just at the beginning of that super cycle. And I think gold, silver, and copper are going to explode.
What was the price of gold when you bought your asset? I know you came from a different industry. What was the price of gold at that time, or silver?
Well, this particular one that we just bought, Dome Mountain, about just under a year and a half ago, gold was sitting at around $1,350, $1,400.
Why were you interested in, given that you haven't been a 50-year geologist digging gold mines? You've been very successful in a lot of different businesses, but why did dirt at $1,300 attract you?
Well, that's a great question, Jacob. That's honestly been my success. And look, I'm the first to admit that I'm not that smart. So what I do is I make sure I surround myself with the smartest people. All right. That is really the method of my, my success and the way I operate. And every smart individual, intelligent individual that I was talking to a couple of years ago, and everything that I was reading was indicating to me that the super cycle, the commodity super cycle was about to begin. And everything that I was reading at the macro level about money and the printing and debt levels and how they were increasing and how governments are under pressure to keep the interest rates low was a strong indicator to me that this is the time that same $1,400 dirt that you're talking about was going to become invaluable. And that is really, the secret. You've got to figure out a way to somehow be in front of the trend, in front of that curve. And a lot of my colleagues in the space thought I was crazy coming in 2019, starting this resource company. So that's really what it is access to information, spending the time, sitting down, planning, thinking, and making sure that you're ahead of the curve.
What inning of this super cycle do you think we're in?
I think we're in the first. I mean, we're literally just beginning. That's why I'm super excited. Hey, listen, I just increased my personal position. I think since the last time we spoke, I increased my personal position in this company by over 1 million shares. So I now have about 5% of the company. And that's why I'm doing it, because I believe that this is the time. All right. This is not the time to be a spectator. This is the time to get involved and make things happen, because I believe we're in the first inning.
How much do you think these infrastructure bills by, let's call it G7 countries, how much do you think that these infrastructure bills will affect this super cycle and end result of this super cycle in commodities as well as in gold and silver?
Oh, it's going to drive it. It's going to completely drive it, right? Because on the one hand, you've got commodities like copper that are going to be required in order to build the bridges and the buildings and everything that we're talking about. On the other hand, you got this money printing going like crazy to pay for all that. So you got copper being propped up because of supply and because of all the demand that's going to happen, and you've got gold and silver that I think that's going to go to the moon because of all this devaluation. So I mean, it's just like the perfect scenario. I mean, it's a dream in my opinion.
And that's why. So let's talk about that. So I think to many people I've noticed, and I notice it also, one of the interesting things about having a large channel in this commodities niche is it's interesting to watch the analytics trend with the price action and also with the news. Silver squeeze is just, in 48 hours, I got more views than the channel got in a month. Right. And so it's interesting to watch the fluctuations, but it also allows me to see, there's regular big believers in gold and silver. There's new people that have never watched a video and somehow the YouTube algorithm shows them their first video, right? So I see all these different styles of comments from different types of people. And I have noticed that besides the diehard, there is a level of people that came in during silver squeeze because the momentum, as you said, get in something before it happens. These people came in after something happened, then it stopped, and then they left again, and they leave comments like, so disappointing, move on to something that will work. And while this has happened, while this sell-off has happened, you have put your money where your mouth is. You bought a lot, and you've been staking your feet in the ground as opposed to leaving. Talk to me about why, as well as to someone that now is questioning is gold, is silver, is commodities, is mining stocks, is this super cycle even going to happen after this sell-off?
Well, it's because, as we mentioned earlier, right, people are short-term thinkers, right? Investing, we're not talking about trading. Investing has a horizon, has a time horizon. And you can't look at something like an interview or something that you're talking about on your channel and say, oh man, it's been 3 weeks now, or it's been a month, and there's a squeeze, and silver's come down or it's gone up, or that's not the horizon that you have to look at, right? You've got to see minimum 18 months or 2 years or three. Again, what we talked about, right? People are just in a hurry to get rich. And that's the challenge, is that, short of winning a lottery, and good luck with that, you've got to.
If you move to California, Gavin Newsom's doing lotteries. If you get your jab, he's spinning the wheel and everything on TV. Oh, geez,
can I get in on that? Come in there and get some free money there. Look, investing is you got to be patient. But if you are patient, and if you stick to the plan, because that's what happened. You can't take a look at a sports analogy, right? I mean, you pick a sport. What are the coaches always come in, and unless there's some disastrous reason to change, you stick to a plan. You don't let the other team dictate how you're gonna. That's what leads you to disaster. So same thing with investing. You can't look at the gyrations of the market and look at this thing went up today and it came down today. That's trading. And if you're a trader, that's fine. But if you're serious about investing, then it's methodical. You invest whatever you have, a little bit at a time, and you build, from that, right? And I think that's the mistake that people they make, right? They want to jump in and out, and that's not the way to do it.
What type of a time horizon do you think is important if you're investing in commodities?
I think right now, I would be looking at 18 to 36 months. I think that this is a brilliant time to get in. And I think that the next 18 to 36 months are going to be life-changing for those people who are in and who are patient and are positioned.
Have you ever heard David Morgan say this quote? He says that 90% of the move happens in the last 10% of the time.
I haven't heard him say that specifically, but I know the the philosophy, and it's a momentum, right? That's what he's talking about. That's what happens, is that it builds, and suddenly it just pops, and that's when you get that big move. And you know what? Sadly, most people get in at that time. Wrong time.
Yeah, right. So why don't you give us an update a little bit on Blue Lagoon? We've had you on the channel before. We've talked a bit about your company. You have made a lot of progress. A lot of companies, obviously I've got a larger channel in this niche, and many companies contact me, and everybody claims they're gonna be a producer. And you guys really have made a lot of strides towards that. And so first, congrats. Second, it's nice to see that you are somebody that follows through on what you say. Third, tell us what exactly has happened, and what you followed through on. What do you want people to know about what's going on?
Yeah, look, execution is the key, whether you're, planning your life or you're in your business. And I am all about execution. That is what I laser beam focus on. And it's really important to me to follow through on whatever, that I'm saying. I'm very excited. Since we spoke last, one of the key things that we've been trying to do is get permission to take a lot of mineralized material that's been sitting in the mine there for years. And we finally got that. So starting actually on Monday, probably by the time you release this video, we're going to have trucks rolling. There's going to be more than 6,000 tons of mineralized material that's going to start going down to the mill. Now, last month we sent a dry run. We sent a truck down to get our roots down properly and figure out the logistics of everything. And it went very smoothly. So I'm very excited about that. So very soon here, probably sometime in the middle to late July, we're going to pour something. We're going to pour our first ounce or our bar, just as a symbol. Of course, we're going to send all the material off, the concentrate, because what I really wanted to see is that big fat check that comes back to the company, from the yield from that. It'll probably be, 2,000 ounces, maybe 2,500 ounces of gold, and a lot of silver we have. So that is huge, because it's going to show the market that we're doing exactly what we're saying. We're getting, very, very close. and it's gonna obviously bring money back into the treasury. And we're getting ready. We just had 8 of our people just to go through a mine rescue safety class. All these are things that are helping us get ready for when we finally make that production decision. So that's number one. And number two, we're so close now. Next week, we're going to start our final trials on our water treatment plant, which is very, very important. It's one of the big milestones because in any mine site, it's very important to protect the environment. We be very respectful, and the water is one of the keys that you have to have. And we have state of the art. I'm so proud of this technology that we're utilizing. It's state of the art, and we're very, very excited about it. So that's going to happen the following week. And then the last piece is drilling is going to start. We announced a 20,000 meter drill program back in January, and we did about 7,700 meters of that. All been news released, great results, all high grade. We were very excited about that. We're going to follow up on that in the second half of that program now, within days. In the next 7 to 10 days, we'll start drilling again. So it's going to be a very busy and exciting summer and a game-changing year, I believe, for Blue Lagoon Resources.
Awesome, Rana. So, you talked about execution, and as we're talking, I like to make this channel not just about gold or the ins and outs of a mining stock. Like, I'm trying to also extract as much as I have a lot of really successful people that come on the show, and it's really cool to get to chat with everyone. But I try to also almost treat it like a coaching session a little bit and try to pick out what I can. And, someone that's been serially successful like yourself, and then also dating back to what you said earlier, and when we were talking about success, and you said execution's kind of been your strong point. And I think about, you said earlier, one of the problems is most people, they don't think at all. And one of the other issues that I find a lot, in my own life and between many people that I talk to is execution. And a lot of that comes, maybe it's analysis paralysis from fear, maybe it's procrastination from distraction, maybe it's being afraid to fail, so they have 9 million projects. I don't know exactly, but I want to talk a little bit about execution. How do you execute? How does one do it? What are the important tenets for executing on your goals?
Great question. Look, one of the keys is focus. We live in a world today where multitasking is acceptable and almost praised. Multitasking is not the way to get successful. You've got a laser beam focus on what you are trying to execute on. If I'm doing 10 different things, it'll never happen. And you can break it down to very, very simple, habits. And it's challenging, by the way, right? The phone is ringing, the texts are coming back in all the time. I'm on my computer working, and there's emails coming one after the other. We're copied on everything, and so you put these things in place. These are great time wasters. Look, let's think about it. There's only 24 hours in a day. We all have the same 24 hours, and if you think about it, 8 to 10 of those are sleep, and we're getting ready to sleep. So let's say that's 10. Now you're down to 14. Now, if you're going to work, for most people, that's 30 to 40 minutes, an hour, going there, coming back. Now you're down. Now you gotta go shopping. You gotta do when you break it all down. How many hours are actually left for you to plan, to execute on something? It becomes very, very narrow. And what people don't understand is time is so valuable. The hour that we just spent, the 39 minutes so far that we've been talking about, various things, obviously on and off camera, are never going to come back. That's gone. That's time that I can never get back again. So it's all here, Jake, what you're talking about, the difference between successful people and non-successful people. Isn't that, they got some big jump and this and that. Those are excuses. It's all here. It's all in how you think. And you said about Earl Nightingale. I listened to the tapes. I'm old enough when I had a cassette recorder, and I used to actually listen to Earl Nightingale and many people like that, and read books. Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, all these basic things that taught me how to think successfully. And that really is what it comes down to, is how do you process information? How do you react? Are you reacting? Are you proactive? That's really, what it all comes down to. But execution is about laser beam focusing on a task, getting it done, and then coming back and get to the next task.
Powerful, powerful. So you were walking around with the original Earl Nightingale tapes, huh?
Oh man, I tell you, it's I showed that to my kids and they just laugh. Hey, you want to know something funny? I'm dating myself. I even had an 8-track. You probably don't even know what that is, right? I mean, it's crazy.
The reason I know what it is because a guy I'm good friends with that worked with Nightingale's name's Bob Proctor. He did the same thing as you, and he would drive around, but he would drive around with his record player in the car because his car didn't have a tape player, and he would listen to Nightingale while he did it.
Well, I didn't quite do that, but you know what? Those were formative years. Those are very, very important. It's probably one of the best gifts that someone ever gave me. Right when I was 18 years old, they gave me "Think and Grow Rich" by Napoleon Hill, and they introduced me to Earl Nightingale. It's just life. It was life changing.
How did Think and Grow Rich affect you?
Well, it's a thought process, right? He talks about in there many different concepts. Too many to get into here, but basically, it's about how you view, and you can simplify things by the glass half full and the glass half empty. I mean, those are very, very basic things, but it really is about how do the people who are actually successful, how do they think? It really, it's what the sad thing is. It really isn't that difficult. The difficulty we are, when you look at yourself in the mirror, that's the biggest problem, right? The person in the mirror is the one that is holding you back from success or failure. And if somebody just used a little bit of discipline and start to make little changes in the way they think every day. Again, people overestimate what they can do in the long term and underestimate what they can do in the short term, right? All we need to do is make little subtle changes every day. And you know what? Earl Nightingale and these thought leaders talked about this. It's 30 days to break a habit. Just pick one, work on it. And next thing you know, the man in the mirror becomes a completely changed person from someone who's thinking, has kind of a broke sort of mentality, to someone who has success mentality.
Powerful. So Rana Vig, absolutely loved and enjoyed this interview. Tell us where we can find more about Mr. Rana Vig, Blue Lagoon Resources.
Yeah, the best place is to go to our website, www.bluelagoonresources.com. I love engaging with shareholders or potential shareholders. So, there's an email link there. They're certainly welcome to email me, and we can talk some more. And if there's any questions or clarifications that I can have, that I can make, I'd be happy to do that. But that's probably the best way. But you know what? They probably don't need that, because you know what, Jake, you always do a fantastic job. You ask really, really great questions. And I think you've probably laid it out for most people, anyways. So I thank you for the opportunity to share some of my thoughts again.
Yeah, great time. It was fantastic chatting with you. For everyone listening, want to thank you for listening today. If you're new, please be sure to hit the subscribe and bell notification. If you're a returner, want to thank you as well for watching this video all the way through. Make sure you hit the like button on this video to send it out in the YouTube universe. If you don't know, all these big firms, whether they're in the gold space or they're in larger news space, they pay YouTube for the algorithm to make sure that their videos show up ahead of small people like me. And so if you think we do a good job on this channel, one of the ways you can support the work is give us a comment down below, hit the like button on this video so you can comment down below, go, gold, go, right there down below. We'll link into Blue Lagoon Resources right there down below. And we want to thank you for coming on, Rana.
Thank you.